Hello everyone. So today I'm back again with another video, and that is basically on the sympathetic nervous system. So we'll be discussing the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system, as we know, it is the one that controls the viscera, the involuntary functions of the body. Autonomic nervous system is of two kinds, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. In this video, we'll be discussing the sympathetic nervous system. In another, I'll be posting another one in which there will be parasympathetic nervous system. And then in another, where we'll be in short discussing the differences between sympathetic and parasympathetic, which is very important for the first year students. But the basic thing is to go for that short video in which we'll be discussing the differences. You should have a clear idea of what is sympathetic and parasympathetic. And believe me, it is very easy to write down the differences or to attempt any MCQs if you just know what it is actually. So the sympathetic nervous system. It is the one that prepares your body for the various emergency situations, the fear, fight, flight responses, right? So what are the various physiological changes that occur in the body whenever there is a sympathetic overactivity, whenever you are nervous? What all can happen? The sympathetic system, it supplies the various blood vessels of the body. So when it is overactive, it constricts the blood vessels. So when it constricts the blood vessels, the blood pressure, it increases. Now it deviates the blood from the GIT and the other pelvic viscera towards, and the skin also, towards the brain, the skeletal muscles, the heart. So what will happen? Now the blood going to the skin is decreased. That means there will be a pale skin. That is why the face appears so pale and cold. What else? The blood to the GIT and the other pelvic viscera is decreased. That means their peristalsis is also decreased. Their sphincters are closed, inhibiting the micturition and defecation. Now the same blood is directed towards the skeletal muscles, preparing them for the various fear, flight, fright responses. What else? The secretory activity of the glands is decreased. Now what will it lead to? Obviously, there will be a dry mouth and the sweating is increased. The sweat glands in your body are supplied by the sympathetic nervous system. So their activity is increased. So now you can clearly understand why there is increased blood pressure due to vasoconstriction, why there is increased heart rate. What else? There is inhibition of micturition and defecation, whereas the skeletal muscles are more active and the mouth is dry because the gland secretion is decreased, whereas there is increased sweating because the sweat glands are stimulated by the sympathetic nervous system. Now, how all does this happen? See, the basic thing is the sympathetic nervous system. First of all, you should know that it is also known as the thoracolumbar outflow. Thoracolumbar outflow. Why do we call it as such? Why is it given this name? Because the nerves, they begin from the T1 to L2 spinal segments. That means all the 12 thoracic spinal segments and also the first lumbar and the second lumbar spinal segments. So that is the reason it is given the name the thoracolumbar outflow. So this is the basic outline of the spinal cord. If we take a section of it anywhere in between T1 to L2, what will we see in it? See, this is an outline and then we have the gray horn. This is the way we make the gray matter. Gray matter is in the center and the white matter is on the periphery. And we have a central canal in the center. Now, this is a dorsal gray horn because it is directed posteriorly. This is the ventral gray horn, and only in T1 to L2 segments we have the lateral gray horn. This lateral gray horn is basically responsible for the sympathetic outflow. So because it is gray horn, what is there in it? It has the cell bodies of all the neurons, and in the periphery, there is a white matter. What does white matter have? It has all the nerve fibers, the axons, right? So we have the cell bodies here. This dorsal gray horn contains the sensory neurons. The ventral gray horn contains the motor neurons, and the lateral gray horn will have all the neurons which are responsible for the sympathetic nervous system. Right? So now, this is the root. What the nerve roots that you see attached to the surface of the spinal cord, this is the dorsal nerve root that is mainly the sensory one, because it is a mainly sensory root. I'll come back to it later on. Then this is the ventral nerve root. This is the motor. This dorsal root has dorsal root ganglia. It is associated with the dorsal root ganglia, which has pseudo-unipolar neurons. And then the dorsal root and the motor root, they join to form spinal nerve. Now, if a question comes, what type of nerve is a spinal nerve? It is very easy. It is a mixed nerve. As you can see, the motor component and the sensory components, both are there in the spinal nerve. So it's a mixed nerve. And then this is one spinal nerve, and this again divides into a dorsal ramus and a ventral ramus. Right? This is a basic structure. Now we will talk about the sympathetic nervous system. We can use another color for it. So this is there are the neurons present in the lateral gray horn of T1 to L2 spinal segments. So the preganglionic fibers, we call them preganglionic because they have not relayed till now. The preganglionic fibers, they start from the neurons present in the lateral gray columns of T1 to L2. Then they emerge out through the ventral root or the motor root, pass along the spinal nerve. Here we have the formation of spinal nerve, so they will pass along the spinal nerve and then pass along the ventral ramus. Then they pass along the ventral ramus. Then what happens? Just lateral to the vertebral column, we have a sympathetic chain that has many sympathetic ganglia in it. So it's a chain of ganglia. Basically, what is ganglia? It is a collection of the neurons outside the central nervous system. So we have many neurons in the brain and the spinal cord, that is the central nervous system. But if we have collections of neurons outside the brain and spinal cord, we name them as ganglia. So we have sympathetic ganglia. So as this is exiting out, close to it there is the sympathetic ganglia. So this is a sympathetic ganglia, right? We are showing it with an orange color. These are just to make the understanding easy for you. Now, this ramus, this preganglionic nerve arising from the lateral gray horn, passing through the ventral root, spinal nerve, ventral ramus. Now, this preganglionic fiber will communicate with the sympathetic ganglia through the white rami communicantis. So this is the white rami communicans. We call it so because it is myelinated. Now this white rami communicans will relay here. This is how we show a relay in a ganglion. And then after relaying, now it has relayed. So after relaying, the postganglionic fiber will arise. This is non-myelinated or unmyelinated, so we call it as gray rami communicans, and it will be distributed then through the ventral ramus and also through the dorsal ramus. Through the ventral ramus and the dorsal ramus. So basically this is the gray rami communicans. So now these postganglionic fibers will be distributed to the target organs and they will travel through the blood vessels. They will be distributed through the blood vessels, right? So starting from the lateral gray horn, the preganglionic fiber through the ventral root, spinal nerve, then the ventral ramus, then communicates with the sympathetic ganglia through the white rami communicantis, which is medulated, so called white. After the relay, the postganglionic fiber is grey rami communicantis, non-myelinated, goes back again to be distributed through the ventral and the dorsal ramus, and then these sympathetic postganglionic fibers will travel along the blood vessels to their target organs. So this is a simple way of explaining sympathetic. You can just understand by this that the sympathetic ganglia is situated so close to the spinal cord. So the preganglionic part is very short, whereas the postganglionic part has to travel to their target organs. So it is going to be very long. Now a bit more details of this. There are few variations in this which also form a part of sympathetic chain, and whenever you will be doing your gross anatomy lectures, you will be continuously going through those words. Now this is the spinal cord, right? This is the spinal cord, and then near the spinal cord we have the sympathetic chain which has ganglia, right? Again, there are cervical ganglia, thoracic ganglia, lumbar ganglia. So we have 3 cervical ganglia. So we can show them with these colors. There are 3 cervical ganglia, right? This is the cervical part. Then there are 12 thoracic ganglia. So we have T1, T2, T3, T4, T5, T6, T7, T8, T9, T10 and T12, and then L1, L2, and then many other further ganglia, right? These are the cervical ones, C1, C2, C3, right? So we said in the beginning, sympathetic one is a thoracolumbar outflow. That means we have it from T1 to L2, right? So now this is a spinal cord. From the lateral gray horn, the preganglionic fibers will arise. From the lateral gray horn, the preganglionic fiber will arise, reach the sympathetic ganglia, relay in it. The postganglionic fibers will be further distributed to their target organs, right? The same thing which we did in the previous diagram, I have shown it in a more simplified way. The preganglionic fiber passing through the spinal nerve, relaying in the sympathetic ganglia, and then further distributed through the ventral and the dorsal ramus to the target organs, right? There can be some other variations also. For example, if the structure in the head and neck is to be supplied, or in the sacral and the lower lumbar areas is to be supplied, then what happens? Again, there is a preganglionic part, preganglionic fiber reaching the T1 ganglia, right? It can move in a cranial direction to any cervical ganglia, relay here, and then postganglionic can arise and supply the structure, right? Similarly, if we talk about this part, the preganglionic fiber can arise from the lateral gray column, reach the lumbar L2 sympathetic ganglia, move in a caudal direction, relay in a lower ganglia and then can be distributed to the target organs. So this is one thing. What else can happen? Now we will be talking just about T5 to T9, then T10 to T11 and then T12. What happens in these? The preganglionic fibers, they come, they do not relay here and they pass out. Now when they pass out without relaying, we call them as splanchnic nerves. I hope this is clear. Everything is relaying. This is relaying in the corresponding sympathetic ganglia, passing out, right? This will move up and then relay. This will move down and relay. But few of them won't relay in the sympathetic ganglia and they will just pass out, and we call them as the splanchnic nerves. So we have the greater splanchnic nerve, the lesser splanchnic nerve, and the lower or the least splanchnic nerve. Starting from the greater splanchnic nerve, what will happen? We have it from T5 to T9. So the preganglionic is coming, passing out from T5. Similarly from T6, similarly from T7, T8 and T9. All of these, they are known as the greater splanchnic nerves. So if a question comes that the greater splanchnic nerves are preganglionic or postganglionic, this is very easy from this that they are preganglionic because they have not relayed anywhere. Now, where will they relay? They will definitely relay, but they will relay close to their target organ, and we call them as peripheral sympathetic ganglion because they are in the periphery. So where these greater splanchnic will relay? They will relay in a celiac plexus and will supply the GIT. They will relay in a renal plexus and will supply the kidneys, and they will directly supply the suprarenal or the adrenal medulla. So they have relayed in the celiac ganglion, supplied the GIT, in the renal plexus, supplying the kidney and the suprarenal medulla. Now what about the relaying in the suprarenal medulla? It is said that the cells in the suprarenal medulla, they are the neurons. They are the neurons. So what happens when these preganglionic fibers, they excite those neurons? They are responsible for the production of adrenaline and noradrenaline, right? These will relay in the plexus and supply the GIT and the kidney. The postganglionic will arise and supply them. But the suprarenal medulla is directly supplied by the preganglionic. The preganglionic fibers, they end on the cells in the suprarenal medulla, and then they will be excited to produce the adrenal and noradrenaline whenever there is sympathetic overactivity. So this was about the greater splanchnic nerves. So they are coming from T5 to T9. So what about the T10 and 11? T10, again they will pass without relay. T11 pass without relay, and these will form the lesser splanchnic nerves. Again, lesser splanchnic nerves will go to the celiac plexus and supply the GIT. Right? Now what about the T12? T12 will again pass without relay, form the least or the lowest splanchnic nerve, and will pass to the renal plexus and supply the kidney. So see, there was a basic structure of the sympathetic outflow, and then there are some additions to it. Few will pass up and then relay, few will go down and then relay, few will pass without relay. Those who are passing without the relay are known as the splanchnic nerves. We have greater, lesser, least. Greater is from T5 to T9. The The lesser is from T10 to T10 and T11, and the least is T12. They will be relaying in the peripheral plexuses, and then the postganglionic will arise and supply the viscera, whereas suprarenal is directly supplied by preganglionic, because these cells in this are the neurons which are directly excited by the preganglionic, and this produce adrenaline and noradrenaline. I hope the sympathetic system is clear to you. If you like this video, please press the like button and subscribe my channel.